What if I told you that on the night of March 15th, 1987, millions of people around the world looked up at the sky and witnessed something that should have been impossible? The moon, our faithful celestial companion that has watched over humanity for thousands of years, simply vanished without a trace. No explosion, no dramatic fireworks, just gone. Like someone had reached up into the night sky with a cosmic eraser and wiped it clean. Now, before you start Googling frantically to fact-check me, let me stop you right there. This didn't actually happen. But stick with me for the next 20 minutes, because we're about to dive into one of the most mind-bending thought experiments you've ever encountered. We're going to explore what would happen if our moon really did disappear overnight. And trust me, the consequences would be far more catastrophic and bizarre than you might think. But first, let's set the stage for our hypothetical lunar vanishing act. Picture this. It's a clear Tuesday evening in March 1987. Families are finishing dinner, kids are doing homework, and somewhere in rural Montana, an amateur astronomer named Jim Patterson is setting up his telescope for what he thinks will be a routine night of stargazing. Jim's been tracking lunar craters for his local astronomy club's newsletter. Nothing too exciting, just a hobby that keeps him busy since his wife passed away 2 years earlier. As Jim adjusts his telescope's focus, something feels off. Where the familiar bright disk should be hanging in the eastern sky, there's nothing but darkness punctuated by stars he's never been able to see before. His first thought is that clouds must be blocking his view, but the sky is crystal clear. Maybe his telescope is malfunctioning? He checks and double-checks his equipment, but everything seems fine. Meanwhile, 3,000 miles away in New York City, Dr. Sarah Chen, a postdoctoral researcher at Columbia University's astronomy department, is pulling an all-nighter analyzing data from the previous week's observations. She steps outside for a coffee break and fresh air when something makes her pause mid-sip. The courtyard, which should be bathed in soft moonlight, is eerily dark. She looks up and feels her stomach drop. The moon is gone. Within hours, observatories around the world are in complete chaos. Phone lines are jammed with calls from confused citizens, amateur astronomers, and panic-stricken officials. Radio stations interrupt regular programming with breaking news bulletins. The phrase lunar disappearance starts trending worldwide before social media even exists to track such things properly. But here's where our story gets really interesting. Let's pause the narrative for a moment and dive into the science of what losing our moon would actually mean for Earth. Because while the immediate psychological impact would be enormous, the physical consequences would reshape our planet in ways that would make the worst science fiction disaster movies look like gentle bedtime stories. First, let's talk about the most immediate and noticeable change: the tides. Our moon is responsible for the rhythmic rise and fall of ocean waters that coastal communities have depended on for millennia. Without lunar gravitational pull, tidal ranges would drop by about 2/3 overnight. The sun would still create some tidal movement, but it would be dramatically weaker. You might think smaller tides sound like a good thing, but you'd be dead wrong. Coastal ecosystems have evolved over millions of years to depend on these tidal cycles. Countless species of fish, crabs, mollusks, and marine plants rely on the predictable rhythm of high and low tide for feeding, breeding, and survival. Remove that rhythm suddenly, and you're looking at ecological collapse on a massive scale. But the tidal disruption is just the beginning. Here's something that might surprise you. The moon acts like a cosmic stabilizer for Earth's rotation. Without it, our planet would start wobbling like a spinning top that's about to fall over. This phenomenon, called axial precession, would become wildly unpredictable and chaotic. Currently, Earth's axis tilts at about 23.5 degrees, and this tilt is what gives us our seasons. The moon helps keep this tilt relatively stable over long periods. Without lunar influence, Earth's axis could vary anywhere from 0 to 85 degrees over periods of millions of years. Imagine winters where the North Pole faces directly toward the sun, or summers where it points completely away. We're talking about climate changes that would make current global warming concerns seem quaint. Now, let's get back to our story and see how this plays out in real time. By dawn on March 16, 1987, the world is in controlled chaos. Dr. Chen finds herself thrust into the spotlight as one of the leading experts trying to explain what's happened. She's fielding calls from CNN, BBC, and every major news outlet while simultaneously trying to coordinate with NASA and international space agencies to figure out what the hell's going on. The theories flying around range from the scientific to the ridiculous. Some suggest an alien spacecraft is somehow cloaking the moon. Others propose that the Soviet Union has developed some kind of advanced stealth technology. The more scientifically minded researchers consider whether the moon could have somehow been destroyed by an asteroid impact, even though that should have created a debris field visible to telescopes. But here's the thing that makes this disappearance so unsettling. There's no debris, no explosion, no evidence of any kind of destruction. It's as if the moon never existed at all. Checking archived photographs and scientific records confirms it was there yesterday. But today, it simply isn't. Religious leaders around the world are having field days with interpretations ranging from divine intervention to apocalyptic prophecy. The Pope calls for calm and prayer. Televangelists claim it's a sign of the end times. Buddhist monks suggest it represents the impermanence of all things. Meanwhile, practical-minded people are starting to worry about more immediate concerns. Sailors and ship captains, who have relied on lunar navigation for centuries, find themselves struggling with navigation systems that no longer make sense. Coastal fishing communities notice immediately that the familiar tidal patterns their grandfathers taught them are completely disrupted. Marine biologists start reporting unusual behavior in sea creatures that depend on tidal cues for spawning and feeding. Let's dive deeper into some of the more bizarre consequences that most people wouldn't even think about. Earth's rotation period, which gives us our 24-hour day, would gradually start changing. The moon's gravitational pull actually slows down Earth's rotation through tidal friction. Without this braking effect, our days would slowly become shorter over geological timescales, but more immediately noticeable would be the effect on Earth's magnetic field. While the moon doesn't directly generate our magnetic field, its gravitational influence affects the flow of molten iron in Earth's core, which does generate the magnetic field that protects us from harmful solar radiation. Sudden changes in rotational dynamics could potentially disrupt these core flows, leading to magnetic anomalies or even temporary weakening of our planetary magnetic shield. Animals would be among the first to notice something was seriously wrong. Many species use the moon for navigation during migration. Sea turtles, which navigate vast ocean distances using lunar cues to find beaches for nesting, would become completely disoriented. Nocturnal hunters that rely on moonlight would struggle to find food. Even domestic animals would display unusual behavior patterns. Back to our story. By the third day after the disappearance, governments are starting to mobilize scientific task forces. The United States launches an emergency space mission to investigate the moon's former orbital position. The Soviet Union, despite Cold War tensions, offers to share satellite data and coordinate joint research efforts. For perhaps the first time in decades, the existential weirdness of the situation forces global cooperation. Dr. Chen finds herself leading an international team of astronomers, physicists, and mathematicians, trying to model what happened and predict what comes next. Using computer simulations that were cutting edge for 1987, they begin to map out the long-term consequences of lunar disappearance. Their findings are sobering. Beyond the immediate ecological disruptions, Earth's climate would become increasingly unstable over the coming decades. Weather patterns that have remained relatively consistent for thousands of years would start shifting unpredictably. The jet stream, ocean currents, and atmospheric circulation patterns that moderate global climate would all be affected by the changing rotational dynamics. Perhaps most disturbing of all, their calculations suggest that Earth's orbit around the Sun would slowly become less stable. The moon's gravitational influence helps maintain Earth's orbital position. Without it, Earth could gradually spiral either closer to or further from the sun over millions of years. But here's where our hypothetical takes an interesting psychological turn. After the initial panic and scientific scrambling, humanity begins to adapt in unexpected ways. Urban areas that were previously light-polluted become incredible stargazing locations. Astronomy clubs see massive increases in membership as people develop new appreciation for the night sky they can finally see clearly. Artists and poets find inspiration in the moonless nights. A new aesthetic emerges in nighttime photography and painting. Musicians compose symphonies dedicated to the missing moon. The absence of something so fundamental to human culture creates a strange renaissance of creativity focused on loss and cosmic mystery. Some religious movements interpret the disappearance as a test of faith or a cosmic reset. New spiritual practices emerge centered around moonless meditation and star worship. Surprisingly, many people report feeling more connected to the broader universe when they can see thousands of stars previously obscured by moonlight. Children born after the disappearance grow up in a world where the moon exists only in storybooks and old photographs. To them, the star-filled night sky is normal. They develop different relationships with darkness, different sleep patterns, and different cultural references around nighttime. But let's not romanticize this too much. The ecological and climate disruptions would be devastating. Coastal cities would need to completely redesign their infrastructure to deal with disrupted tidal patterns. Agriculture would be challenged by increasingly unpredictable seasonal patterns. Many species would go extinct as ecosystems collapsed and reformed around new environmental realities. Dr. Chen, now in her 70s and looking back on that night 40 years later, has spent her entire career studying the consequences of the lunar disappearance. In her memoir, published in 2027, she writes about how that single night changed not just astronomy and earth science, but human philosophy and culture. She describes how the disappearance forced humanity to confront its cosmic fragility in a way that no other event had before. Nuclear weapons made us aware we could destroy ourselves, but the moon's vanishing reminded us that we exist in a universe that could change the rules without warning or explanation. The mystery was never solved. Decades of investigation, space missions to the moon's former orbital position, and analysis of every possible scientific explanation yielded no answers. The moon had simply ceased to exist, leaving behind only gravitational effects that slowly faded as orbital mechanics adjusted to the new reality. Some theories suggest the moon was somehow transported to another dimension. Others propose it was disintegrated by unknown technology. The most disturbing theory suggests it never existed at all, and human memory and records were somehow implanted with false lunar history. But without evidence, all theories remain equally speculative. As I wrap up this thought experiment, consider how much of human culture, language, and understanding is tied to the moon. We measure months by lunar cycles. We use phrases like once in a blue moon and moonshot. Our calendars, our poetry, our romantic imagery, our werewolf movies, our understanding of tides and seasons, all of it assumes the moon will always be there. The hypothetical disappearance I've described reminds us that the cosmic conditions supporting life on Earth are far more delicate and specific than we usually consider. Our planet exists in a narrow band of space where liquid water can exist, orbits a star that burns at just the right temperature, and is stabilized by a moon that's just the right size and distance to create the tidal and rotational conditions that allowed complex life to evolve. Tonight, when you look up at the moon, remember that its presence is neither guaranteed nor insignificant. That bright disk hanging in the sky is not just a pretty light show, but an active participant in the complex dance of forces that makes our world habitable. So the next time someone tells you the moon landing was fake or that astronomical research is a waste of money, remind them of this little thought experiment. The moon isn't just a rock floating in space. It's a crucial component of the only known life-supporting system in the universe. Sweet dreams, and may your moon always be where you expect to find it.